I'm going to take you to Jeremiah the prophet in the Old Testament, starting with chapter 8, verse 18 through the first verse of the 9th chapter this morning. These are the words of Jeremiah, but they are the words of God through Jeremiah. My joy is gone, grief is upon me, my heart is sick. Hark the cry of my poor people from far and wide in the land. Is the Lord not in Zion? Is her king not in her? Why have they provoked me to anger with their images, with their foreign idols? The harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we are not saved. For the hurt of my poor people I am hurt. I mourn, and dismay has taken hold of me. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then has the health of my poor people not been restored? Oh, that my head were a spring of water, and my eyes a fountain of tears, so that I might weep day and night for the slain of my poor people. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Father, we ask for your strength and your guidance this morning. We ask that you would place words in my mouth which would be pleasing to you, that you would sit beside us where we are this morning and receive the message that you have for each one of us. In Jesus' name, amen. A few years ago, when we knew that we were moving to Kansas, we were at the Huntsville, Arkansas. Parsonage there was on about an acre of land, and I wanted to make sure we left the parsonage grounds in good order. So I got my lawnmower and my weed eater and my chainsaw all working at the same time, which is very unusual and is pretty dangerous around my house too. At the end of the day, there was a lot of newly mown grass, freshly cut weeds, and some needlessly down tree limbs and branches scattered about. That's how we guys are sometimes when we get the chainsaw going. Some limbs come down, which don't necessarily need to, but they do. So I gathered it all up in the back of my truck, and I hauled it off, way off about 20 yards to the vacant lot next door, and deposited it there. And that's where, I guess, the 100 to 1,000 chiggers must have been lying in wait for me, because that's about how many bites I ended up with that night. And they were all up and down my feet and legs, and they were around my waistline and my hands and arms, and they were all the way up to the middle of my chest, and they itched. And then when you scratch them, they burn. And I was in misery that night because I didn't have anything to put on. I didn't have no cortisone cream, no Blue Star ointment, no calamine lotion, no Campho-Phenique, no Chig-Away, no polysporin, no salve, no gel, no spray, nothing in the house to ease my pain and discomfort. There was certainly no balm in Gilead to be found. By the way, there is very little balm to be found in Huntsville, Arkansas either, because I was looking for some. I did find some tiger balm. I have some tiger balm up there. I found some of that. I found a stick of Burt's Bees Nourishing Lip Balm with mango butter, but it was no help. I found a tube of udder balm, too, for the happy cow. Have you seen any of that? Recommended for use on udders and hands and feet and other skin areas exposed to frequent washing. That's what it says in the label, but it was of no use to me. There is very little balm in Huntsville, Arkansas, and evidently there was none in Gilead either at the time Jeremiah writes this passage. That Gilead balm must have been some good stuff, because Jeremiah thinks enough of it to include it here in this message this morning. And from the research I've done on it, this balm was used for a lot of things, including chigger bites. No one knows for sure, but it most likely came from the rosin of the wild pistachio or acacia tree, and was manufactured there in Gilead, which was about 35 miles northeast of where Jeremiah was from, a little town called Anathoth. And along with soothing bug bites, it had other medicinal purposes. It would speed up the healing process. It would seal up wounds when it dried. And it was an embalming agent. If you think about it, that's where the word balm came from. Embalm. And it was used to anoint bodies for burial. But there was no balm in Gilead. There was no doctor there either. No physician to write up a prescription. No compounding pharmacist available to mix up a dose for those who needed it, including down on their luck prophets like Jeremiah. He was in misery too. They call him the crying prophet. Sounds to me as if he was in even more misery than if he had had 100 or 1,000 sugar bites around him. The prophet Jeremiah lived and preached in some very dark days for the Jews. It was just prior to when Israel and Judah were conquered by the Babylonians to the north. The Babylonians captured Israel, which was the northern kingdom of the Jews, around 597 BCE, which stands for Before Common Era. And then later, Judah, which was the southern kingdom, which included Jerusalem, only about 10 years later. They captured the whole of Israel. Jeremiah had told these folks that God's message to them was that they better shape up, start living the way God had instructed them to live, or they were going to be destroyed by a foe from the north. Nobody wanted to hear this from Jeremiah, so he became something of an outcast. He was an irritating chiggerbite to the peoples and the kings of Judah, because he kept telling them, one after the other, that they would be much better off if they went ahead and just surrendered to the Babylonians who were coming down from the north, than to wait for the destruction that was surely to come. Jeremiah said it was God's judgment on the king and his people for their unfaithfulness. But these stiff-necked people would not listen. And now their destruction is imminent. And in fact, as far as Jeremiah is concerned, it's already happened. That's part of the problem in trying to understand what a prophet has to say. They speak as if the future has already occurred, because to them it has. If God speaks it, it's already happened as far as they're concerned. And God spoke to Jeremiah. He spoke it to Jeremiah that a foe to the north is coming. So it has happened, even though the people don't know it yet. So Jeremiah laments and he cries and he suffers, not from chigger bites, but from utter despair. He could have used some of that happy cow's udder balm. There is none, though, not in Gilead, and there is no physician there. Jeremiah laments the fate of his people, and at the same time, he suffers the same feelings as his God. Jeremiah is a prophet, after all, and he knows how God is feeling, even if sometimes he doesn't want to know how God is feeling. Jeremiah suffers from a bad case of empathy. It's not sympathy, it's empathy. Do you know the difference? It's not the same. Sympathy is when we understand what someone is going through. Empathy is when we actually feel what they feel. Let me give you an example. 6-year-old Janie lost her favorite doll while she was playing at her best friend Susie's house one day. Heartbroken, Janie sat on the steps and began to cry. When Susie's mother came outside to check on the girls, she found that both Susie and Janie were sitting on the steps just sobbing their lives out. When she asked what was wrong, Susie told her through her tears that Janie had lost her favorite doll. Susie's mom looked a little puzzled, so she asked her daughter, "Did you lose your doll too?" Susie said, "No, I'm just helping Janie cry." That's empathy. When our heart breaks for another, Jeremiah's heart is breaking, not only for his people, but it's also breaking for God. He speaks for God when he says, "My joy is gone." This is God speaking. "My joy is gone. Grief is upon me. My heart is sick," God says. He hears what God hears when he says, "Listen to the crying of my poor people from far and wide in the land." And he asks the rhetorical question he knows is on the lips of the people. Is the Lord not in Zion? Is her king not here? Where is God when we need him? Why will God not restore us? We don't understand. We ain't too bright. Jeremiah already knows the answer. There is no balm in Gilead. There is no physician there. But God was always there. It was God's people who turned away. Time and time again, disregarding all of Jeremiah's warnings. It all started when they asked Samuel for a king. It seems as if God and God's judges weren't good enough for them. They wanted a human king like the rest of the known pagan world had. So Samuel gave them a king, and then another one, and another one, and another one after that. And with a couple of exceptions, they were all bad. Then God's people wanted some worldly idols they could see and worship. They wanted some golden calves. They wanted some silver snakes. They wanted statues of men who wore crimson and purple cloth. So they made themselves idols which they placed ahead of God. And they worshiped these idols instead of God. Then God's people wanted every day for themselves, including the Sabbath. Every day became like every other day, and every other day like the day before that. None holier than any other. So they did not honor the Sabbath and keep it holy as God had commanded. Yet the people asked, "Where is the Lord? The harvest is past, yet we're not saved. Why have you not restored us to health? Where are you, God?" Does any of this sound familiar? How often do we disregard God's commands, turning a deaf ear to what the prophets have been telling us for 4,000 years? For instance, how many gods and kings have we placed before the real God and King? You got the King of Pop, King of Swing, King of Rock and Roll, Burger King, Mattress King, the Burrito King, Sacramento Kings. Shoot, we even have our own King James. His name is LeBron. How many gold and silver idols do we have? How many folks wearing crimson and purple do we worship? We got that gold Mercedes in the garage. We got that silver trophy on the mantle. We've got our own American idols walking down red carpets and statues of sports heroes enshrined in halls of honor. And do our days seem to kind of run together? None much holier than the one before or the one after, when God has asked for only the Sabbath? They're all gods anyway, though. God invented days. God invented time. They all belong to God. God asks us to keep one holy. Just one. They're all His anyway. He can have them all if He wanted. There are too many other things to do on the Sabbath than to keep it holy. Look around you. Come to think of it, this does sound vaguely familiar, doesn't it? Yet we ask, where's God when I need Him? Jeremiah knew the answer. God is right where we left Him. God was right there where the people of Israel and Judah left Him. God was right there as Israel and Judah were captured. God was right there when Jerusalem fell. And God wept with Jeremiah for the slain of His people. There was no balm in Gilead to soothe the bites, to seal up the wounds, or balm the dead. There was no physician there. Not because God wasn't there, but because God's people weren't there. A doctor can't doctor if the patient won't show up. The balm was there in the form of obedience to God, but God's people were not obedient. They would not take their medicine. What about us? Is there balm in Gilead for us? Don't we ask the same questions that Jeremiah asks in this scripture? Is there no physician for us? The answer is a resounding yes. Yes, there is. Oh, one small detail I left out about this balm, which was manufactured in Gilead. Some people also called it myrrh. You remember myrrh? Is it gold, Frankenstein, and myrrh?
Yeah.
I mean frankincense. You know what I mean. That stuff that the wise men from the east brought to a toddler from Jesus in Nazareth, to Jesus in Nazareth. Do you remember that? Same stuff. So it seems that the balm of Gilead actually ended up in Nazareth. It ended up with a couple of newlyweds by the name of Mary and Joe. Do you remember that? Was there a physician there? Well, as a matter of fact, there was. The balm of Gilead, which could soothe chapped lips and bug bites and seal up gaping wounds and embalm the dead, wound up in the hands of the great physician. This precious balm was no longer restricted to Gilead. It now roamed the banks of the Jordan River. The balm of Gilead climbed the mountains of Hermon and Olivet. The balm of Gilead walked along roads of Jericho and Samaria and Emmaus. The balm of Gilead ascended the treacherous hill of Golgotha and was raised on a wooden crossbeam so that the greatest healing of all could take place. There was no balm in Gilead, no physician there. But thanks be to God, the healing balm of Christ's blood was shed for us in Jerusalem on that Good Friday afternoon. Nails pierced his hands and his feet, and the holes caused by our sin and forgetfulness were sealed by that balm. The spear was driven into his side. The woundedness of our punctured spirits was soothed by that balm. Where others were embalmed for eternity, Jesus broke the bonds of the burial process, the whole thing, and rose again to give us hope for eternal resurrection. The last line of that beautiful song that we just sang says it all. If you can't preach like Peter, if you can't pray like Paul, you can tell the love of Jesus. Just say he died for all. No, there was no balm in Gilead. There was no physician there. But thank God the balm in Gilead became the rose of Sharon, the bright and morning star, the way, the truth, and the light. And that physician, well, that would be the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. There was no balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. The balm we need is Jesus Christ, the one who died and was raised again to heal the sin-sick soul. Thanks be to God.